People always ask me how I built a six-figure flipping business. They see the monster scores. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars in profit from a single unit. And they think it's all about getting lucky. But here's the thing. It didn't start there. It started right here. A rusty 5x5 unit, $100 to my name, and a van I had to borrow from my buddy. I made just about every mistake you can possibly make starting out. In this video, I'm going to break down the exact step-by-step system that took me from this to this. This isn't about luck. This is a tactical guide to the numbers, the bidding strategies, and the hard lessons I learned at every single level of the game. This is where most of us start. You've seen the shows, you've heard the stories, and you've scraped together a little bit of cash that you're willing to risk. My first budget, exactly $100, period. That had to cover the unit, gas, dump fees, everything. If I went over, I was already losing before I'd even started. My strategy was simple, because it had to be. Find a small, manageable unit that the pros would ignore. My approach back then was to hunt at smaller, independently owned facilities that didn't always have a huge online presence. Market conditions are always changing, but at the time, this often meant a smaller buyer pool and lower bids. I found a 5x5 that looked like a total disaster from the doorway. It was crammed with beat-up boxes and what looked like straight-up junk. The experienced guys glanced at it and moved on. That was my chance. People get emotional and bid on what they can clearly see. They saw junk, I saw boxes. And my hope was that people pack their most personal and sometimes most valuable items away in boxes. The bidding kicked off at $10. It jumped to $25, then $50. My heart was pounding. I gave myself a strict rule, one I actually still stick to today. I set my maximum bid at 15 to 25% of what I conservatively think the contents can sell for. This is my personal rule of thumb. You'll have to figure out what works for your market. I guess there was maybe $400 of resellable stuff in there if I got really lucky, so my absolute max bid was $100. The bidding stalled out at $75. I waited. The auctioneer started his final call. I jumped in at $80. Someone else hit back at $85. I bid $90. And then, silence. It was mine. The first mistake I made was a classic, completely underestimating the sheer amount of work. It took me 2 full days and 4 trips in that borrowed van to get it cleared out. After sorting through everything, I had 3 piles: sell, research, and trash. The trash pile was massive. This is where your profit can absolutely die if you're not careful. My dump fees ended up being $30. So, what was in it? A ton of clothes, and to be honest, most common, everyday clothing has very little resale value. But then I hit a box of old video games, a Nintendo 64 with about a dozen classic games. Another box had some awesome vintage band t-shirts, and way in the back, a solid wood dresser. Nothing that was going to make me rich overnight, but it was a start. Let's run the numbers, and remember, costs like gas and dump fees can vary a lot depending on where you live. The unit cost me $90. The dump fee was $30. Gas was around $20. My total cost was $140. The Nintendo 64 and games sold for $150. The dresser, after I cleaned it up, sold on Facebook Marketplace for $100. The t-shirts, sold as a single lot on eBay, pulled in another $75. So, $325 in revenue minus my $140 in costs left me with a profit of $185. It wasn't a jackpot, but it was proof. It proved the system could actually work. I more than doubled my money, and that $185 was the seed money for the next level. The lesson here is simple: survive. Start small, control your costs, and bid with your brain, not your adrenaline. Your goal isn't to hit a home run. It's to get on base and stay in the game. Alright, level 2. I call this the grinder level, because that's exactly what it is. This is where you go from being a hobbyist to acting like a business. I took that $185 profit and rolled it all into a bigger budget. Now I was playing with a $300–500 bankroll per unit. This is where you can start eyeing those 10 by 10 or even 10 by 15 units. These are the mid-tier lockers where you start finding better quality items, decent furniture, power tools, electronics, and collectibles. On a great day, the profit potential on a unit like this can start to climb into that $2,000 to $5,000 range. But that's a standout result, not the average. But bigger units mean bigger risks and a lot more complexity. My strategy had to evolve. I stopped just looking for good stuff and started hunting for specific categories I knew I could flip fast: tools, sporting goods, and kitchen appliances. Why? Because there's always someone on a local marketplace looking for them, so they move quickly. At this level, being organized is your profit. I built a system. The second I won a unit, the clock started. I sorted everything right there on site: sell, research, and dump. The sell pile was for stuff I could price and list that day. Research was for anything that seemed valuable, but needed a quick check on eBay sold comps or WorthPoint. And the dump pile was for pure trash, which I got rid of the same day so it didn't pile up. I bought a 10 by 10 unit for $450. It was packed. I could spot a lawnmower, some power tools, and stacks of neatly labeled plastic tubs, which is usually a great sign. Organized people tend to keep better stuff. When I dug in, I found a whole set of DeWalt power tools, a pressure washer that looked like it had barely been used, and several boxes of high-end kitchenware. But this level comes with its own pitfalls. My big mistake was getting buried in inventory. I had all this amazing stuff, but my garage was an overflowing disaster zone. I learned the hard way that you have to list things immediately, so I made a new rule. List a minimum of 5 to 10 items every single day, no excuses, until that unit's inventory is online. I also forced myself to have an exit plan for every item before I even bid. Who's the buyer? Where will I sell it? How long should it take? Let's break down the numbers on that $450 unit. Unit cost, $450. This time I needed a U-Haul, which was about $60. Gas, $30. The dump fee for some junk furniture was $75. My total cost was $615. The DeWalt tool set sold for $500. The pressure washer went for $200. The kitchenware, sold off in a few different bundles, brought in about $400. Dozens of smaller items added another $600. Total revenue, $1,700. So, $1,700 minus my $615 cost gave me a profit of $1,085. This is the grinder level. You're making real money, but you are working for every single dollar. You're building systems, learning your local market, and tracking every cost in a spreadsheet. Success here is all about discipline and efficiency. You stop chasing a feeling and start running the numbers. Hey, quick pause. If you're getting some real value from this breakdown, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. I'm documenting my entire journey, the wins, the losses, all of it, to give you a no BS look at how this business actually works. It helps the channel a ton. Alright, now for the level you've been waiting for. Welcome to the big leagues. We're talking budgets of $1,500, even $3,000 or more, for a single unit. At this level, you're a full-blown professional reseller. You have a dedicated space for your inventory, a shipping station, and maybe even some part-time help. And yes, this is the level where one unit, if you're smart and a little bit lucky, can genuinely deliver a $10,000 plus profit. My strategy here changed from what can I sell to what can I sell for the highest margin in the least amount of time. I started targeting units in or near wealthier zip codes, looking for clues of high-end goods. I also got pretty good at reading the other bidders, learning to tell the pros from the emotional buyers who just have their heart set on one item. The unit that changed everything for me was a massive 10 by 30. The starting bid was high at $1,000. I could just make out the back of what looked like a vintage motorcycle, some huge art canvases, and boxes labeled studio equipment. My heart was racing, but I trusted my system. I did a quick, pessimistic estimate of what I could see. I calculated my likely costs for labor and transport, and before the auction even started, I set my absolute max bid in my phone, $2,800. The bidding was a blur. It flew past $1,500, then $2,000. It turned into a war between me and another pro. The auction stalled at $2,600. He bid $2,700. I took a breath, waited a beat, and came in with a firm final bid, $2,800. He just shook his head and walked away. It was mine. Now, the biggest mistake at this level is trying to process a monster unit with a beginner's setup. It'll crush you. I had to hire 2 guys for the day, just to help me clear it out. We had a large truck ready, and everything went straight to my new warehouse, a 20 by 20 unit I rented just for the business. You have to be willing to spend money to make money, and you can't let your garage bottleneck your growth. The payoff was just incredible. The motorcycle was a vintage 1970s Honda that needed some work. The studio equipment was a complete professional photography setup, lights, backdrops, and several high-end digital cameras. The art was from a known local artist. The numbers on this one were life-changing. Unit cost, $2,800. Labor, $300. Truck rental, $120. Extra warehouse space for 3 months cost me $600. My all-in investment was about $3,820. The motorcycle, even before a full restoration, sold to a collector for $4,000. The photography gear, sold off piece by piece, brought in over $6,500. The art sold at a local gallery for $3,000. After selling off all the other smalls, the total revenue from that one unit was just over $15,000. Minus my investment of $3,820, the profit from that single unit was over $11,000. That's the power of scaling. It's about making bigger, smarter bets and having the systems in place to handle the work that comes with them. You have to be willing to reinvest those profits back into your business to see real growth. So how do you actually go from broke to rich flipping storage units? It's not by getting lucky. Luck is definitely a factor in this game, but you can't build a business on it. You build a business by progressing through these levels with discipline. At level 1, you learn to control your cash and your emotions. Your only goal is survival and proving the concept. At level 2, you build the machine. You track every number. You learn your market, and you become ruthlessly efficient. And at level 3, you scale. You pour your profits into bigger units, better tools, and streamlined operations to handle massive scores. The secret isn't the one jackpot unit. The secret is the system. It's about bidding smart, knowing all your costs before you even think about profit, and having a plan to sell every single thing you buy. This is a volume and knowledge game, not a lottery ticket. If you treat it like a business, it will pay you like one. Thank you for watching. If you want to see what I find in my next high-stakes unit, make sure you're subscribed. And check out this other video where I break down the 5 most common mistakes that cause flippers to lose money. Until next time, keep hunting.